Okay. Good morning, everybody. Excuse me. Glad to see you all this morning. This, of course, will be our last meeting until after Thanksgiving. Um, so if I don't get to tell you that, everybody have a happy and safe holiday, and we'll see you on December the 5th. So, what's on the agenda for today? Have a really interesting presentation. We'll hear from Ed Hackett with the Tucson Fire Department in just a couple of minutes. But let's go ahead, first of all, thanking our sponsors, Valley Telecom Group, Care First Health Plan, Khajiit Triad Wireless, and Karen Ziegler Consulting Services. We appreciate that. Who do we have that's new today? Ed, we'll introduce you later. Do we have anybody else who's new to us today? Teresa, I know you're new to us today.
Yes, good morning. I'm Teresa Wine. I'm with WeCom Fiber. I've just taken a new role as their digital navigator field marketing specialist. So excited to be here.
So she's interested in meeting all you folks who are engaged with digital navigation. So we'll, of course, we send out the attendance list, and so we will do that after the meeting. I want to just remind everybody about two things. First of all, as you know, I send out my newsletter with links with follow up to the meeting. We have the video, the registration, the chat, and summary and everything is available. So if you either missed this meeting or you missed some things and want to catch up on what happened at the meeting, that it's a good place to do that. It's sometimes, and then related to that is that I do send out the chat with the newsletter, but if you want to do the chat more quickly, you can download the chat to your computer. You can go to chat, go up to the upper right hand corner. You'll see three ellipses. Click on that, and it'll say save to this computer, and you can save the chat because people put contact information and share things in the chat, and so it's a good way to capture everything. Do we have anybody else who's new to us today? Going once, going twice. Okay, so let's just jump into it. Aaron, I want to introduce Aaron Lorandos, who most of you know, who is the ACA Digital Equity Program Manager with the State Broadband Office. And so, Aaron, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, thanks everybody. Good morning. As Steve mentioned, my name is Erin Lorandos, and I am with ACA. I don't have a ton of new information right now. We are on the BEAD side of things. We have opened that pre-registration window for eligible applicants to get all of their pre-registration information submitted before the first round of actual applications opens, which of course is scheduled for December 20th at this point. The pre-registration will stay open through the rounds of actual application, but it is the most, we'll say, labor-intensive part of the application process. So we do encourage folks to pre-register ahead of when the actual applications open. Let's see here. I will drop a page link for you here. Everything on the BEAD side of things can be found on that page. There will be updated resources on the website, including the pre-registration webinar recordings, slide decks, some FAQs, and things like that coming in the next week or so. We're catching up on the things that happened last week and getting all of that information available online. There are still office hours being offered, and registration can be found for that on the website as well. Best way to reach out to the office, of course, is through our inbox that we all see, which is broadband@azcommerce.com. And I'll put my contact information momentarily for the digital equity side of things as well. Let's see here. I think that's it for BEAD. On the DE side, not a ton to update. We're
Aaron, hold
still.
on a second. I'm trying to find who
And
needs to get.
Nolly and Stacy, those four people.
It's Vaughn.
Was
It's
it?
Vaughn.
Yeah, I was looking for him. I thought that was Vaughn. Oh, there he is. Okay, go ahead. Sorry about that.
No worries. That's okay. No worries at all. Just mentioning not too much on the digital equity side. We're still working through the approval process for our capacity grant. So that's, still with the federal government. Once we know more on timelines there, we'll be happy to share. As I mentioned before, the whole broadband inbox right now gets a little full with BEAD related things. So if you'd like to talk about digital equity things, it's probably easiest to reach out directly to me, just so that we make sure that we get things done in a timely manner. I think that's about it, unless there are any questions. Let me give you our contact here, the general one, and mine. Let's see. Anything else I can answer while I'm typing?
Any questions for Aaron? Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate the update. Don't believe Nicole is here this morning. So moving on, and I don't think Amina is here yet. Are you, Amina? Well,
I just pinged her, Steve.
okay. Okay, well, hopefully she'll be able to join us in a minute. But just wanted to tell you that starting today, we are going to have a regular update, which we kind of have done anyway, but kind of a Washington watch on broadband policy and what to expect from Congress and the next administration. And again, I just want to remind you that we are a nonpartisan organization, but lots of stuff is happening, as you all know, in Washington regarding broadband, digital inclusion, and everything. And so we're going to try to give you an update on a regular basis. And that's going to be interesting since it changes from day to day and hour to hour about what's happening there. So we're going to, and then after the first of the year, when we have a better feel of what's actually happening, that we will do a more extended discussion about what's happening in Washington and what the implications are for broadband. So I just wanted to mention that. And Aaron, I believe the broadband office is still looking for a tribal liaison manager.
So that position is with ACA generally, not just with our office.
Okay.
I don't have any updates. I think the posting is down, but I'm not sure if they've found somebody or if they're just working through the process at this
Okay.
point. But that being said, it's not a filled position yet. So
Sure. Okay. All righty. So moving on, and when Amina joins us, we'll get back to that update. So future presentations, I am going to work on getting the workforce development session done, hopefully right after Thanksgiving, and kind of give an overview of what's happening with workforce development here in Arizona, and hopefully to give you a picture of what, to the best that we can, because it is a huge monster, about what the workforce infrastructure looks like here in Arizona. So working on getting that put together. So with that, I want to just jump into our
Steve, on that, the governor has just formed, I don't know the proper name of it, but I just heard of it last week, a big workforce development multi-agency working group or task force. So you might want to find someone that can talk about that.
Yeah, I am aware of that, Mark. I've actually included it in the newsletter, and I'm hoping to get Carlos Contreras, who is the executive director. I'm not sure exactly what his title with OEO, and he's very engaged with that. So I
Sure.
will be looking for him to kind of give us an update of what OEO is into. I actually had a good conversation with one of his people and was kind of surprised to find out how much they're doing actually with digital equity related training. So I'm hoping to get him on the panel. In the meantime, I do want to find out who's leading that task force, Mark.
Is that Mark? Isn't that's called the Talent Ready Arizona Initiative? Is that what you mean?
If that is what was just launched, that sounds about right.
Yep.
Sorry.
That's it.
Yep. Thank you, Henry.
Okay. Mala, are you online? Mala, where are you? Guess she's not here today. So
I am, but
oh, there you are.
Steve, I can't talk today,
Okay.
so I'm gonna pass.
Okay.
I've got a horrible throat.
I was going to say, are you sick?
Yes, I am.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Well, I hope you feel better.
I do hope so.
So let's just jump into our presentation for this morning and want to introduce Ed Hackett, who's the Deputy Chief for Tech Services with the Tucson Fire Department. Is that correct, Ed?
That's correct.
So I discovered this new project that they have on Tucson Dispatch, providing telehealth for 911 calls, and Ed's kind of one of the leaders in that project. And so I thought it was really cool and might be something that other folks and other communities who are on this call might have an interest in. Yeah, as those of you who've been with us for a while know that telehealth is very much of interest to this group. So with that, Ed, I'm going to turn it over to you. Did you want to share something, Ed?
No, I don't have any. I hesitate to call it a presentation, maybe more
Okay.
of a verbal introduction and just kind of brief overview of what we're doing here and kind of the purpose behind it and what we hope to get out of it, and maybe some of the things that we've done to help get it off the ground. So just to get things started, my name's Ed Hackett. I'm a Deputy Chief of Technology Services for the Tucson Fire Department, and I work closely with the Public Safety Dispatch Center here in Tucson, which is a dispatch center that dispatches for a number of agencies in southern Arizona. And as every business pretty much is, and while we're a public service, just like any other business, we're short on resources. And there are a couple of factors that we look at when we're always looking for ways to stretch our resources out and to provide better service, because that's what it comes down to. If we don't have the trucks available to run those 911 calls, then we're not providing the service that the public is asking for and needs. So one of the directions we went is in researching the 911 calls that we have, we found a number of them, they didn't end up in a transport to the hospital for looking at the medical side. So when you call 911, as I'm sure many of you know, you're guided through a series of questions, and those questions are designed to make sure that whatever your problem is, you get the right resources at the right time that are going to get you the help you need. So we're finding a lot of folks who didn't have anywhere else to go would call 911 because we kind of end up being the clearinghouse for problems that nobody seems to have an answer for immediately. So 311 and that connection of disparate resources throughout the city is one avenue that has been employed to kind of take the load off some of the more, let's say, service-oriented calls that come into the 911 center. But for medical calls that don't quite meet the level of an emergency that requires 4 people on a fire engine or 2 people on a paramedic truck to show up at the door and prepared for the big emergency with the transport to the hospital, there's a lot of calls that come in that just don't need that kind of service. And in addition to not needing that service, while those trucks are visiting that person, then they're not able to respond to the people who do need it rather. So long story short, we ended up working with a company called MD Ally, who is also being used in Phoenix. And depending on the way the medical questions are answered when the person calls 911, if they don't meet the acuity that is required to initiate a EMS response directly, then they're transferred to a medical center where they actually talk to either a doctor or a doctor's agent, like a PA or someone, who will then handle those requests. And as they're during that conversation with those other medical resources, if they determine that, this person probably would be better served by a transport to the hospital, then it gets sent back to 911. But what we're finding out is about 50% of the calls that are coming in that are that meet the criteria to be transferred to the telehealth, about 50% of them end up being served through the telehealth service, whether it's prescriptions or a ride to a medical appointment. There are a number of resources that they can employ to meet the needs of those callers without sending out a fire truck and an ambulance. The ones that the medical staff at the telehealth company decide do need that transport, they get sent back to the 911 side and then dispatched as a normal call. So what it's ended up doing for us is it's kind of been interesting to watch. We started it with just a regular 8-hour-a-day trial. And then recently in the beginning of October, we went to 24/7 operation. And we did some press release, some public education on it to let folks know that it was there. And we've seen it grow from the beginning to where now we're getting about 200 calls a day as of this past month that are being transferred to the telehealth. So that means, 100 calls a day are being taken off of the fire trucks, assuming that about half of them end up going back to the fire and EMS services. We're getting pretty close to 100 dispatches a day, and that's just within the city of Tucson. That doesn't include any of the surrounding area. So we've just recently had some interest from Sierra Vista. They're interested in the program, and like I said, Phoenix is using it, but they have a little bit different model than us. So I believe we're working with them to kind of share information and see how we can help each other refine our process, because it is very much a learning process. So that's kind of the brief overview of it. So if anyone has any specific questions, I'll be happy to see what I can do.
Okay. Any questions for Ed?
Yeah, Ed, I was just going to ask, when you talk about telehealth, are you including both phone calls as well as Zoom calls, or how does that set up for the clients when they have a telehealth?
So on the 911 side, it's just a phone call, just when anyone calls 911.
Yeah.
The telehealth company, MD Ally, they have the ability to set up a video chat. So they can do that as well. So they can work it over the phone or video.
Okay, I see.
It'll start out as a phone call, but they can adapt from there.
Okay, so you don't have any data yet on how many are video type of telehealth versus just a phone call? with
I don't know that off the top of my head, but that's a good question. I could find out.
yeah, okay, that's interesting.
Let me make a note here.
Gordon Fuller here. I was getting ready for a meeting with Jan Lesher, and I started poking around on Tucson Fire Department, and I saw that they had 98,000 calls in 2022. And it turned out, according to the records I saw in the county, only 14% of those had anything to do with the fire department. So when I saw this, I realized what a wonderful innovation it is. And I can think that it would probably help a lot if we had accurate spatial computing instead of just GPS to help point people in the right directions when they're arriving at an emergency situation or in coordinating in emergency conditions.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the 14%. I know last year we ran 104,000 calls. About 85% of those are EMS. And, you know, whether maybe the 14% is of the EMS that got transported to the hospital by Tucson Fire, you know, I'm not sure what those numbers are off the top of my head, but we go to a lot of calls. I do know that. So any that we can kind of, from our perspective, from the perspective of the fire department, anything we can do to get those calls to the right resources and save our trucks for the calls where they're really needed, excuse me, is, you know, good business for everyone.
I could just think of the equipment and personnel, you know, all being applied so needlessly. That's just quite an extraordinary thing. Good work.
Well, and I wouldn't say needless. You know, many of these folks have very definite needs. It's just the 911 system, as it's traditionally arranged, isn't the best resource to answer those needs. So when we can put them in touch with a doctor or medical professional that can directly address that need, whether it's transport to a doctor's appointment or, you know, an update of a prescription, delivery of medications through a number of public outreach services. You know, there are a lot of things that the fire department just can't do. You know, we're not set up for it, and in some cases, we're not allowed to do it. And getting those folks to the right resource actually gets them the care they need faster.
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
Ed, this is Vaughn Croft at Job Corps here in Tucson. The TC3, that's a pretty vital component of what you're talking about, is it not?
It is. So for those who aren't aware, within the fire department has a cooperative agreement with Tucson Medical Center, and we provide a lot of outreach. It was kind of initiated from a lot of the same sort of thought, in that we would get people who would call 911 multiple times. They would have needs that the fire department couldn't address, but they were using the fire department as the intermediary with community services because they didn't know how to get a hold of them. So we worked with TMC to establish a group that we call TC3 that is kind of an outreach, and we call their actual title is navigators, and it helps folks who have specific healthcare needs or issues that, again, aren't best answered by 4 guys on a fire truck or 2 people in an ambulance. It helps them find their way to those resources that they need, and then provides follow-up and, you know, maybe some additional, whether it's help with constructing a ramp in their house or maybe shower handles in their shower. You know, there's a ton of things that these the TC3 folks do besides just direct people to the right resources. They get out and get hands-on with a lot of our customers, and it's really been a great benefit to a lot of folks. And again, it helps the fire department in that it takes those calls where the people on the trucks aren't necessarily the best resource, and gives those folks the resources they need in a much more efficient manner.
Any other questions for Ed?
Actually, I have one that's off the subject. And Steve, Amina can't, she said the link isn't working for her.
I just sent it back to her. I just sent it
Okay,
to her.
she's trying to get on. But anyway, Ed, thank you for your presentation and for talking with us. So I slacked you, or I put my comment directly to you in the chat. My name's Elena Lowry. I'm the Arizona Director for Common Sense Media. And so we primarily work with educators and families. And so my question is like a little out of left field, but we've been talking to a lot of public safety officials about school cell phone bans. And I know there's a lot of people on the call that are either with libraries or schools or, et cetera. And so first responders are telling us, especially if they're dealing with school lockdowns, that they're in favor of the cell phone bans in schools. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because I know that it can overwhelm the system with students using their phones during the day if there's an emergency, calling 911. And then also they were telling us that with all the parents that show up at the schools to get their kids during an emergency situation like a lockdown, that then you guys can't get in and do your jobs. Is that, I know it's totally out of left field, but since I had you, I thought I'd ask you.
Well, I will say I'm certainly not the authority to give the definitive answer on that particular question, but I do know that, as you stated, everyone calling 911, whether it's the kids calling parents or kids calling 911, it does cause a lot of confusion and mayhem. There are definite positives to having cell phones available because it does allow direct communication, let's say from a child to a parent, to let them know that, yes, they're still alive or okay, or, whatever the scenario is. But when that child is not able to answer the phone, even if they're okay, as a parent myself, I can tell you with firsthand knowledge that there's not much that's harder to deal with than a frantic parent from an emergency services standpoint. And so I don't know what the right answer is. I think that's kind of a jurisdictional and school-based. Those rules are more from the schools. My wife works at a school, and they're very limited on the use of their cell phones. I don't, kind of going off topic on the off topic, here in Tucson, the Tucson Unified School District just recently did a big purchase of a system that provides an emergency pendant for the teachers to wear. So in the event of a major emergency, they have a pendant where they push a button a certain number of times for different sorts of notifications or to elicit a certain response. So that is currently being worked on right now. The Public Safety Dispatch Center has also been working with Motorola. They have a program called the Rave Panic Button, which is a telephone app that provides kind of emergency notification as well as very specific GPS location information for when it's designed for use in schools or like government buildings, that sort of thing, and can be used to give and receive notification in the event of an emergency at a site. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in that field, and we're all learning about it at the same time here.
No, that's great. I appreciate that. That's so interesting that those other options are available. So thanks for that.
Yeah, there was a recent shooting where they had just employed that a recent school shooting where they had just deployed that pendant, and someone saw the shooter walking into the school, so they pushed the with the gun. They pushed the pendant, and the school was on lockdown in a matter of minutes, and it worked really well. And that's been a big driver in the adoption of that particular device.
Well, thank you for that. I didn't mean just like throw you off course there, but like I said, since I had you, I was going to ask you.
No, that's great.
So Ed, I think when we talked, and maybe you addressed this, I was kind of trying to pay attention to some other things going on here, but I asked you about who pays for this, and I think you said the city of Tucson. And are there any charges to anybody who then uses the telemedicine service? How does that whole system work?
So it works through insurance. The medical service, MD Ally, is able to bill insurance. So that, that's kind of their bread and butter. That's where it's like a doctor's office over the phone. So they get insurance information and can bill that. So there's no charge to the city because it comes to to my knowledge. I'm not, I've worked with the fire department. Part of it's really run through the dispatch center. So I'm not involved in all the daily details. Like I said, I just have the overview of it. But I'm pretty sure it's just billed through insurance. And
if people don't have insurance, as I'm sure you know, that people call 911 or other kinds of services expecting that somebody's going to show up, and they don't have insurance. They don't have health care. I mean, for a lot of people, that's the only way they get health care. Emergency rooms.
Yeah, a lot of those folks, they can petition for emergency access, to the access healthcare system. So there are a number of routes. I'm not sure where the other funding would come from, but there may be some federal grants that are kind of similar to the broadband grants for access that apply to telehealth. I'm not certain on that, but I know that they're not doing it for free, and I don't think that we're paying them. So I just don't have all the details on how they're getting paid.
And they're not on here today, but I think I mentioned to you that we have the Arizona Telemedicine Program, which is one of the top telemedicine programs in the country, and they're based with the University of Arizona, and so it might be something for you guys to connect. And unfortunately, as you heard, Mala's not doing good today, but she's been very engaged in working with the libraries, looking at telehealth. I think I mentioned that to you. And so
I saw she had a question in the chat there about when folks call 911 looking for resources and they get directed to telehealth. Her question is, if we send them back to 911, if they need 911, does it not cause crucial delays? And it really shouldn't, because the way the 911 questions are designed, if someone has a crucial time-dependent medical emergency, they're going to be directed, ambulance is going to be dispatched right away anyway. They're going to bypass the telehealth option, so they wouldn't be directed to telehealth to start with. Let's see. They have like one that's kind of a drop.
Somebody, I'm not sure who that is. That's we're getting background noise.
Yeah, I have a cubicle, not an office. So
that's you. So that's you. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that we can deal with as long as we don't have anybody else on our call. Any other questions or comments for Ed? So Ed, have you seen other communities here in Arizona who are aware of this and are have an interest in rolling this out?
Yes, Sierra Vista is looking at it. I know Phoenix, the city of Phoenix is using it. Their success rate isn't quite as high as ours as far, or they're just, a lot of it has to do with medical direction. So depending on medical direction provided to the development of the 911 questions and the criteria that meet the telehealth diversion, is very dependent on somebody from a medical direction standpoint taking responsibility for the accuracy and safety of the questions that are asked to divert folks to the telehealth. So I think there's just a lot of collection of data, reviewing incidents that got transferred back to 911, making sure that we're providing the right service, the best service, the right service to the right people at the right time, and not skipping anyone or missing an emergency that we should have just sent directly to the EMS resources.
Any other questions for Ed? Going once? Going twice?
Yeah, I have
Go
a
ahead.
real quick question. You mentioned something earlier, and I missed the name of the company. You said you're also partnering with a company. I think it was called T3. Is that
so? TC3 is an
TC3.
internal, yeah, it's an internal fire department division that is coordinating and receiving funding from Tucson Medical Center and the TMC Foundation. So we have nurses from Tucson Medical Center partnered with navigators who work for the fire department. And
Okay.
they're kind of also teamed up with our public education group. So there's a lot going on in that division.
That was interesting. So yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure I made a note of that. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, Ed. Well, thank you very much. It's really a pretty exciting program.
It's really relatively new for us. Like I said, it went 24/7 in October. So after a short trial period before that. So we're still very, very new with it. And there's a lot of learning and tweaking going on, but it's doing a great job at helping us get the right resources to the right people at the right time and take a little bit of a load off some of our trucks in the field and make those resources available for the people who really need it. So thank you.
Pretty awesome. Thanks for being here, Ed. Really appreciate it. I've added you to our list. You're welcome to join us whenever you can. I know you're busy, but we're not an emergency call, fortunately. But you are more than welcome to participate with us.
Well, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate the learning from the group as well.
And I'm sure that Mala will be in touch with you when she's feeling better. She's pretty good about that. So anyway, thanks again, Ed. Okay, so give me just a second here. Okay, Amina, I believe I saw that you have joined us, and there you are. And I apologize, I'm sorry that you had a problem getting connected with us, but would love to have you kind of give us an update on what we know about what's happening in Washington these days. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great.
And if you would introduce yourself first, Amina.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. My name's Amina Feslula, and I'm head of tech policy advocacy at Common Sense. And my background is in telecom law and antitrust, and as well as consumer protection issues. I have been following the upcoming changes with the new incoming administration at the federal level, and it's hard to predict a lot in this moment. I think there are a few certainties. We expect a new chair to be announced, Chair Carr, who participated in Project 2025, and listed some of his thoughts and ideas in that. So, we're pulling from that to the extent, to understand where the FCC might be headed. I think when it comes to broadband, um, it's possible that there will be more of a focus on um, broadband related to spectrum or um, related to changes around USF. Um, because the USF program is currently um, uh, involved in a court review, there is a expectation um, that the Supreme Court will take up a case that's looking into a non-delegation doctrine issue related to the USF program, specifically around the contribution mechanism. And so that will likely sort of chill activity at the FCC until that court case sort of plays out. So we expect that to take up most of 2025. And
Excuse me,
then,
Amina, could you
Mhm.
explain a little more for folks? I think many of our people probably know, but to explain a little more about what's happening with USF and what the issue is, please.
Yeah, so there have been challenges to the USF program in terms of whether or not the FCC is allowed to delegate authority to USAC, which is the nonprofit that administers the program. The FCC controls USAC, directs USAC um, in the administration of the Universal Service Fund program and has for the past few decades. Um, there's a circuit split on essentially on whether or not the FCC has that authority. So it's relatively fundamental to the way the current USF program is structured and operates. Um, Even though there is this challenge, the program will continue. So, for example, the next upcoming E-rate funds, that application window is opening and will continue. Um, the updates and modernization efforts to E-rate will continue uh, in all likelihood, despite the fact that this court case is going forward. So on not much will change in the short term for folks who are utilizing the USF program, but there's a possibility of some really drastic changes to the USF program, um, if the Supreme Court decides to take up this issue. And what could happen is that the program could get essentially, as it's currently functioning, get struck down so that the FCC will sort of have to halt the USF program to determine how they're going to proceed with the contribution mechanism. In which case, in all likelihood, Congress will take up the task of, well, we'll have to determine whether or not they want to take up the task of reconstituting the program or providing additional detail in the statute so that, you don't run into this problem again. Already, there is, for the past session, there was a USF contribution reform working group. It's bicameral and bipartisan. They've been actively putting together like concepts of how contribution reform would operate, as well as other changes to the program that they would put in statute, so through the legislative process. So there's a lot of pieces that are moving at the same time, which can be a little confusing. But the short sort of answer is that the USF program, for purposes of like the next round of E-rate funding, is continuing and sort of not impacted by the current challenges. However, once those play out, I think there could be potentially an impact to the program. So that's probably the biggest activity in the year ahead and under the next administration and with the new Congress. I think that folks who utilize the USF program, whether it's the high cost E-rate lifeline or the telemedicine, telehealth programs, should keep an eye out and potentially be prepared to engage with Congress to petition for their parts of the program, because there'll be an opportunity for Congress to reopen how the entire USF program is designed, um, and potentially lock it into statute, this new design, and remove the FCC's authority to do, change to the program through rulemaking. So it'll be important to really pay close attention, because if the Supreme Court decides that there is a problem with the way the program is currently designed, then Congress will definitely have an opportunity to redesign the program. And even if the program continues without an impact from the court case, the contribution reform conversation may also give Congress an opportunity to reopen the statute and make changes to the program. So I would expect in the year ahead that we should be prepared to engage with Congress on changes to the USF program if this is a program that impacts you. And I do expect Commissioner Carr or Chair Carr to potentially free some of the modernization efforts that Chair Rosenworcel has started. So specifically, the initiatives around like Wi-Fi on buses, hotspots, and sorry, what I trying to remember the third one, but they're the Learn Without Limits initiative. Yeah.
Cybersecurity.
Yeah,
Cybersecurity.
the cybersecurity pilot. I expect that there's a possibility that the chair will consider reversing those changes, even while the court case is ongoing, once there is a 3-2 majority in favor of the Republican chair. So that will take some time potentially to actually happen. So I expect this first round of E-rate funding to be unchanged. However, it's certainly on Wi-Fi, on buses, and on hotspots. We know that he has dissented already, so we expect him to push back on those programs when he has the votes to do so. So I would be prepared for sort of 2 tracks where there's, or actually, I guess if we're being really picky, 3 tracks. So there's going to be potential reversals at the FCC once there's a 3-2 majority. I think there will be potential court impacts to the USF program if the Supreme Court takes up the case, and then there could be, even if that doesn't happen, there could be changes to the contribution reform mechanism and then other USF programs through Congress. So that's one area, and I think it'll be a really critical moment for voices who care about the USF programs to be heard. So, because if there are changes made by Congress, it will be very difficult, and they don't allow the FCC to have regulatory authority over the USF program, or if they limit it in some way. Those changes will only be, you can only change that language through another act of Congress. And that's not how the USF program has operated. It's been modernized through rulemaking for the past few decades. So it will be a significant shift in how people have been able to improve and change the USF programs over the past few years. So it'll be really important to be engaged because whatever comes out of Congress will stick for a long time.
Okay. So I know that there's lots of other issues out there, and if there's any changes that could happen with NTIA, apparently there's not much that they could do about BEAD at this point, but who knows? And then there's
So I do
privacy
think,
issues. There's lots of other issues out there.
yeah, well, I think on infrastructure with the BEAD program, it's possible because the money is has sort of been designated and out the door. It's unlikely that it'll be clawed back, but I think that it's possible that some of the DEA, the Digital Equity Act funds, the like follow-on rounds of federal funding could get clawed back. Um, Again, I think it'll be a moment for folks who are engaged in the BEAD funding to, reach out to the new leadership at NTIA and be heard, so that they, understand the value of the funds and the commitment of the community to engage. That the Digital Equity Act funds, I think the same and probably like more effort should be placed in ensuring that there isn't an impact to those follow-on funds, because those could really be in danger of being clawed back. But I think that there's an opportunity, again, to be heard early in the administration, to protect the existing expected uses of that funding stream. So for folks around this call that are engaged in either the Digital Equity Act funding or the BEAD funding, I think there's value to reach out once there is new leadership at the NTIA. And then obviously, I think it's unclear where things are headed on privacy and on other sort of tech policy issues, because a lot of that will be determined by the new Congress. And there are a number of advisors that come from the tech world, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, who have like particular points of view and have outsized influence in the next administration. So and even, VP Vance has particular interests in tech. It's hard to predict kind of which direction things will go. I do expect to hear, um, a lot of uh, interest around a comprehensive privacy bill, um, potentially interest around um, efforts to prevent platforms from content moderation. And there may be some interest in like children's online safety, or yeah, writ large, but like in various through various channels. So, incoming chair of the Commerce Committee, Ted Cruz, he had bill that attached restrictions on social media use to the E-rate program. So there may be these types of like carrot stick approaches, where we'll see um, restrictions or requirements placed on some of the federal funding programs.
I guess there's been some talk regarding going back to the USF for a second, that I guess there's been some talk about having big tech companies contribute to the USF rather than just the broadband providers or telecom providers, as is the case now.
That's right. So that's part of the contribution reform efforts. Like I said, it's hard to predict whether or not those efforts are going to be supported by the incoming administration because of its relationship to tech. Um, yeah, it's really hard to say. I mean, I think it can go two ways. It could be depending on which tech companies are impacted, it might go forward and it might be a way to change the contribution process. But it's really at this point, it's unclear whether or not those types of proposals will go forward. I know that incoming Chair Carr had been supportive of um, having platforms pay into the USF program. I don't know if that concept still has support, but we'll see.
Um, so we'll come back in just a second, Amina. But Mallory, do you have anything that you want to add? There's still a lot of other issues out there, and we're going to have more discussions about this at future meetings. But Mallory, is there anything that you want to add?
I don't think so. I think Amina hit a nail on the head on most of the issues. Right now there's a lot of uncertainty. Where at one point people thought there was, it was maybe fairly certain. So now we'll just kind of see how things go. And I don't think I have anything to add on those topics. No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody have anything else? Amina, did you have anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Just add, during the last Trump administration, I think that there's some direction from the White House on telecom issues and tech issues. But oftentimes what we saw was that the agencies of importance, so the FCC or the FTC, NTIA, whoever was in charge at those agencies had kind of a broad mandate to operate as they wanted to. And so I think that, for those of us that are going to be advocating for particular issues related to broadband, any outreach that you can make to, the incoming chair, I think will be really valuable because in all likelihood, not on every issue, but I think on many issues, they're going to have a lot of say over what happens. So putting effort into that outreach will probably be valuable.
Is there an expectation that the NTIA leadership will change?
That's going to change.
I think so. I haven't seen, and maybe others have. I mean, I feel like every day we get an update on who might be part of the incoming administration, but I haven't seen who would be, replacing Alan Davidson, and how quickly they would do that.
I saw one of his posts that he was saying he didn't expect that he was going anywhere, but anything can happen. And of course, then the other thing, and of course, you mentioned the previous Trump administration, but we do have another player in the game right now, which of course is Elon Musk, and it may be a push to look at more use of alternative technologies as a result of his participation and other telecom issues that maybe has gotten less focus in the past that may get more focus. Again, who knows, right?
I think that's right. I would fully expect, that satellite would get a renewed focus. I fully expect that, like I said, I think Spectrum will probably get the Spectrum Authority, and moving forward with Spectrum auctions will probably get a renewed focus. So I think that's right. That I think there's going to be particular priorities that are going to come from the advisors that are surrounding the incoming president. So I would expect to see that happen. I think that, so where would that impact some of the like current work that's being done on broadband? I think it could. That's why I said it could impact BEAD if plans aren't already out there, or if there is like a rewriting of language. Like I find it's difficult because so much of it is already done. Um, the other place where I think it could impact is, in whatever language comes out of Congress related to USF. So like rejiggering of priorities for the high cost fund, uh, which, is not CapEx, right? So this is ongoing support. So I think it like that could be a pretty big shift and a big change. I think, obviously spectrum authority and spectrum auctions, which ones go first, how they're actually managed. I think those could be impacted. And then when it comes to affordable broadband, um, it'll be interesting to see if we've already seen in some of the proposals around changes to ACP or inclusion of affordable broadband in the USF reform process, a prioritization of rural communities. Obviously, the cost to reach rural communities is higher, and if there is a preference or a priority given to satellite, then the cost would be even higher. So, like, I think that it's yet to be seen, but that could also be a vehicle where we see a preference for satellite and funding for satellite in the language. Um, but like I said, it's yet to be seen.
Okay. Well, Mina, thank you. And we know that there's lots of issues, and of course, this is going to be changing from day to day. We could do this tomorrow, and it could be like totally different than today.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, I feel like, certainly come January or February, I think we'll have like a better sense of the lay of the land, and we'll happy to update folks because I think priorities will be more obvious and we'll have a better sense of, what will be on the table at that point.
But the one thing that we all need to keep an eye on is the USF fund, because that's an important fund for a lot of different programs, particularly E-rate. So we do need to make sure that we keep up on that issue.
That's absolutely right. That's a guarantee, right? Like there will be activity and changes to the USF fund, I think, in the next year ahead. And, whether that's just at the FCC by, reversing some of the reforms that Chair Rosenworcel made, or through Congress, where they start to take a more aggressive step forward with their contribution reform process and potentially other changes to USF and statute, or at the court. And I think all of those three are in play, in progress, and likely to happen to some extent.
Thank you, Amina. Great overview. Really appreciate it. And again, we'll be doing more of these sessions, and we'll look forward to your participation.
If I might, Steve.
Yeah, go ahead, Gordon.
Of immediate impact would be the story I saw breaking in the Arizona Central on the incompetence and damages caused by the fiber optic companies working up in the Phoenix area, Scottsdale and Maricopa County. Did you see that article I sent over by Apple News?
Yeah, I did, Gordon. We couldn't. I don't have an account with Central, so I couldn't read it.
Well, it has. It bears on that issue of who is going to be installing all this fiber. How's that going to get done? And here's this story out of Maricopa County, where just vast incompetence has resulted in horrific damages in the millions, for Salt River Project and the other power utilities, and damages, and it's just crazy. They have people working well outside of OSHA regs and 14-hour days and Georgia plates, you know, and they could subcontract subcontractors from everywhere to do this. And my God, you know, this is the money we're talking about, the $1 billion now. This was related to power infrastructure, as I think I understand it. Gig company. Yeah.
Thanks, Gordon. So I want to do a couple of quick things. So Ed, I see you're still online, and I wanted to just quickly introduce you to Michelle Simon, who is also on the call. Michelle is the director of the Pima County Office of Digital Inclusion. And Michelle, I think you and Ed might want to connect and see if there's some ways, and particularly the project you got going on with telehealth in the libraries.
Nice to meet you, Michelle.
Are you still there, Michelle? Michelle, are you there? Okay, well, anyway, Ed, we'll make sure that you and Michelle get connected. It might be some benefit there. So with that, Anthony, you're still online. Anthony, you want to give us a quickie update on anything that's happening with the state library and some of the work you're doing?
Hey, Steve, good to be here. Not too much to update. We do have a new person starting with us in December, our library technology specialist. So we're hoping to get him going and introduce him to the group, hopefully early December. Outside of that, not too much else going on right now.
Okay, thank you. Mark, you want to do a quickie about Kirk's upcoming event in the ATIC providers group?
Sure. Thanks, Steve. ATIC, the Telecom Council, has had a periodically meeting broadband provider working group, mostly at Kirk's Big Data Southwest conferences. So on December 5th, we will have a breakout session at his all-day conference. Their access to the broadband provider working group session is free for broadband providers and tangential parties to that. There is a special registration link for just registering for that session. It will be both on-site and remote. We'll sort out who needs remote access from the registrations. But there is also for ATIC and AZBSN participants a 50% off discount code for the entire day. It covers data centers, AI, to some extent broadband, but not certainly focused on broadband or digital equity that we do here, but may be of interest to some of you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And again, that information is available in my newsletter with the links to be able to participate. Any other announcements that anybody might have? Going once, going twice. Ed, thank you again for being here. Very exciting program, what you're working on.
Thank you much for the invite, and let me know when the next meeting is.
I will. I've added you to my list. You'll get regular announcements about our meetings.
Thank you much. Nice to meet everybody.
Anything else that anybody wants to share? Well, I'm going to stop. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, this is Christy in Yavapai County with the Library District. We're going to be hosting a digital equity workshop on December 4th at 10 a.m. So if anybody's interested, we're writing the digital equity plan up here, and if anybody's interested with partnering or participating in that, more than welcome to attend that.
Okay. Anything else?
This is Tamara, and I just want to give I wanted to give a shout out to Christy because the work they're doing up there is really impressive. They're very well organized, and I had the chance to attend one of them a few months ago, the first one they did, and really helpful and great best practices.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Steve, can I send you a flyer for that workshop so you
Absolutely.
can post that to people? Thanks. Thanks
Absolutely.
so much.
And please do that soon because I'll be sending out my update here pretty soon. And of course, we
Get
have
that.
Thanksgiving coming up, so we want to get that out before the holiday.
Absolutely. I'll get that to you right away.
Okay. Well, I'm going to stop recording. Just again, I hope you all have a safe and great Thanksgiving. Don't overeat, or you'll have to call the fire department. um, but thank you all for being here. I'm going to stop recording and